Hey there, YouTube friends and followers. In this video, we're going to be talking all about the seller's closing costs, what closing costs are, and how they may affect you as a seller in the greater Daytona Beach area. So stick around. Welcome back, and thanks so much for joining us. If you are new here, my name is Tiffany with homesofdaytonabeach.com. In this video, we're going to be touching on seller's closing costs. So if you're a buyer and you're interested in learning about buyer's closing costs, then just check out the link in the description below for that video on buyer's closing costs. A question that I get asked pretty frequently by potential sellers is, what are closing costs and how much is this going to cost me? Closing costs are just a bundle of fees that are due at the time of closing. Sellers will have closing costs and buyers will have their own separate closing costs. These closing costs could include any buyer's credits that you've agreed to, property tax prorations, or other closing fees, just to name a few. So let's take a look at what some of these closing costs are and break them down for you. First, let's talk about any existing mortgages that you may have on the property that you're looking to sell. If you do not own your home free and clear and you do have a mortgage or maybe two mortgages on it, then you're going to want to make sure that you have the funds available in order to pay off that mortgage at the time of closing. Typically, sellers will just use the proceeds from the sale of their home in order to pay off the remaining balance of their mortgage. But if that's not something that you'd like to do, then you just need to make sure that you have the funds in reserve in order to pay that existing mortgage off. Next, we're going to talk about real estate commissions. So typically in the state of Florida, it is customary for the seller to pay both the listing and the buyer's agent's commission. That is, of course, if you choose to use a realtor to help you in the sale of your home, and I highly recommend that you do. Here in the Daytona Beach area, the typical commission rate is 6%, with 3% going to the listing agent's brokerage and 3% going to the buyer's agent's brokerage. The 6% is taken from the total sales price of your property. So if you wanted to figure out what your commission would be, then you would just take your sales price of your home and multiply that by 0.06. There's also going to be a title agency that will be involved in your transaction. You may hear this referred to as the closing agency. Here in the Daytona Beach area, a title company is typically the agency who handles the closing documents for any real estate transaction. You may find in some other areas that an attorney may be the closing agency or another escrow providing agency. But here in our area, a title agency is typically used, and the title agency is chosen by the seller. And the seller will pay a fee to the title company in order for them to do all of the work that needs to be done to get us to the closing table and get you paid. So while we're talking about the title company, they do actually do several different things throughout the transaction. They're going to run a couple of different searches on your property and title. So first, they're going to do a title search. And what this is it just makes sure that you are the actual for real owner of your property and you do have the authorization to sell your property to a potential buyer. The next search that they're going to complete is a LIEN search. And what this does is just looks for any maybe open permits that you have, any building code violations, or things that may make it difficult in order to get that title transferred to the buyer with no issues. A seller is also typically responsible for providing the buyer with a title insurance policy. And this just helps to give the buyer peace of mind that in case something else should come up after the transaction has closed, that they are still going to be the legal and rightful owner of that property. There may be some homeowners disputes, there may be liens or other things that were not caught in the LIEN search, which protects that buyer for future references. So there are also some taxes that are collected by the county that the seller is responsible for funding. These are what are called your document stamp taxes, or you may also hear them referred to as dock stamp taxes. What these are taxes that are collected by the county in order to transfer the deed and record it with the county for the new buyer. Almost every single county in the state of Florida uses the same millage rate to calculate what the cost of those dock stamp taxes are going to be. And it is 70 cents per every $100 of the total sales price. So if you wanted to calculate what your dock stamp taxes would be for your specific transaction, all you have to do is just a simple math equation, and you take your total sales price of your home and then you multiply that by 0.007. While we're talking about taxes, let's go ahead and talk about property tax proration. So in the state of Florida, we pay our property taxes in arrears. So we don't pay forward, we pay for the year previous. And your property tax proration is going to be calculated based upon the number of days that you have owned and resided in your home that you are selling. So your rate is going to also fluctuate. So let's say that you have got your home on the market and you're going to close sometime in October or November. So you're going to be responsible for a much higher property tax rate than you would if you were selling your home earlier in the year, like in February or March. If you live in a neighborhood where there is an HOA and you do pay dues quarterly, monthly, or yearly, then that is also prorated at time of closing. So if you have already paid all of your HOA dues for the full year, but you are selling your home and closing in the month of April, you may actually get a credit back from the buyer because you've already prepaid those HOA dues. So, and it could be the flip side. If you owe some HOA dues and that haven't been paid, then you may actually have that fee at time of closing. So everything is up to date. The last thing that I want to talk about is something that not every transaction is going to have, but you may be responsible for some seller's concessions. When you were negotiating your contract, you may have agreed to some seller's concessions. And what these could include, you may have agreed to pay for a home warranty for a buyer. You may have agreed to give them a credit at time of closing to make small repairs on the home. Or you may have actually agreed to pay for some or all of the buyer's closing costs. So those are just some things that could come up if you agreed to those while you were negotiating the contract on your home. And there you have it. Of course, every single real estate transaction is going to be a little bit different. So if you've been thinking about listing your home, but you have some additional questions about what your closing costs might be, how it might affect you, you can always reach me either phone, text, or email, and I'll put that information down here in the corner so you have easy access to it. Or you can always visit me on my website at homesofdaytonabeach.com. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.